Or how is it going?
Hey, going good.
Where are we at now? Let's see. Tesla stock is up 0.7%. Man, keeps going up. What do you think about this?
Well, I'm surprised it's not going up more, honestly. Um, I think the fair price right now can't really be below 300 if you digest everything that's going on with FSD. And more than that, there seem to be a string of positive catalysts coming to kind of burn shorts as short interest swells to levels not seen since 2021. Everybody just got too excited about a few bad delivery prints. They said, "Oh my God, this is it. The sky is finally falling." And they've positioned themselves for an apocalyptic scenario when, in fact, the exact opposite is happening. Obviously, we got a delivery beat in Q2. In Q3, we're not just going to get a beat, we're actually going to get a record number, something they haven't been able to claim for a few quarters. So that's going to be positive. We're now 1 month away from the Tesla Cybercab unveil. Hands-free FSD is rolling out as we speak. Banish and Smart Summon are coming. So we'll have sort of a beat on deliveries in Q3. We'll have the Cybercab event. And we're also, as we get into the back half of the year, really looking at a situation where inevitably the Fed is going to start cutting rates. So I think I saw somebody saying that the readings from the futures market suggested a 70% chance of a September cut. There have been a lot of signs of a slowdown, a lot of people talking about a possible recession, which is actually, from a monetary policy perspective, probably a positive as it brings in that rate cut. And I estimate that any potential impact of a recession would be relatively muted given that rates are at such a high level that we could easily provide stimulus just by lowering those rates. And I believe those things are all going to start to play out at the same time. You're really seeing FSD make leaps and bounds, the Robotaxi vehicle being unveiled, all while you have a backdrop of improving fundamentals in the business, energy taking off in a way that I think is going to be material, adding another, 10 cents to EPS potentially. And then at the same time, vehicles returning to record deliveries, all while short interest is at record highs and rates are coming down. So probably, 300, I think, is really a minimum for where this thing should be trading at, given all those factors. And the market is going to start to kind of catch on to this.
Well, what do you make of Tony Sacconaghi's commentary then? He says the stock price is detached from fundamentals.
Well, Tony is looking at the past fundamentals. So, yes, it is detached from the past fundamentals. The market is thinking about the future fundamentals of the business. If you went to Netflix and you said, well, this is never going to be a company that's generating billions and billions in revenue because, well, the nature of the DVD by mail business is this. They need to have this many distribution centers to get to that much revenue. And you would totally miss that they were moving into a future where you just stream movies online. So sometimes you have to not look at the past business, but the future business. It's great that they're seeing a delivery beat. I think automotive sales are going to continue to increase as they roll out hands-free FSD around the world. But I mean, we're really looking at a business where I think automotive hardware long term will be not more than 25% of revenues.
Automotive revenue won't be more than 25% of total revenues by when?
by let's say 2034.
Yeah, I mean, that's a decade away. It's going to be a while before the market prices that feature, don't you think?
I mean, I don't know. I think when you look at the pace of which the other businesses are evolving, particularly FSD and Optimus, there's going to be near-term revenue generation opportunities along the way. FSD is already estimated to be up to 3 billion. Optimus is going to start being used in the factories next year. It's not just something that happens in 10 years. It's something that you can actually see the progress of when you look at the products today.
The other.
Yeah, I think a good way to think about it is it would be really weird if Uber started to sell cars. How many people will be buying cars from Uber or Lyft? Or if like Airbnb started to sell real estate, obviously the reverse is happening. And then Omar, I had a question for you about 12.4.3. Uh, Maybe now isn't the time, but later on, hopefully you can share your experience comparing it with 3.6.
Yeah, 12.4.3 is pretty incredible. It sometimes has some weird, slightly buggy moments that I attribute it to being relatively new, but it just has incredible capabilities. So, you can just tell it to drive you, 45 minutes away through tons of crazy traffic and it'll just do it. And I was driving to go to Machine's mom's house yesterday and I was in San Francisco and I said, "Hey, take me to Redwood City." And it just started driving me there through all the crazy traffic in San Francisco. When it had to turn onto the highway on Haight Street, there were so many people leaving San Francisco that Sunday afternoon that um, the road was completely blocked off. There was no way to get there. It was just too jam packed, and the car couldn't get into the right turn that it needed to make to get onto the highway. Now, normally on FSD 11 or 10 or 9, this would be a guaranteed takeover. The car would try and make the right turn anyway, it would get in some weird position, and you'd inevitably have to take over. Or if it did decide to go a different way, the wheel would be like jerking around, going left, going right before finally deciding what to do. It'd be kind of a stressful situation. In this example, the car just noticed that the road was full and it just rerouted so smoothly. It went forward, it rerouted instantly, it jumped in the left turn lane, and it got onto another entrance to the highway that wasn't crowded at all. And I mean, well, actually, that entrance was really crowded, and it was so crowded that like people weren't really in the lane lines. Like there were like, one car was half there were two cars within a lane and like both are like half in two lanes if that makes any sense. So cars are just all kind of piled on top of each other without any regard to where the lane lines are. And it just smoothly kind of actually went around and got in that right turn lane and got onto the highway. I was like my jaw was on the floor. It's like it wasn't even looking at the road markings anymore. It was just thinking about physics and like what's the physics needed to actually, get in here without hitting any cars. And it took me all the way to pick up machine without any intervention and pulled into the parking lot and parked all by itself without me even engaging auto park or anything. So I was like, wow. Then I picked up machine. First drive started out a little weird. It was kind of like going left and right a little bit, which was a little strange. But there was kind of a legitimately confusing lane situation. So I think that kind of explained it. So it was kind of off to a weird start. I was like, oh God, is it gonna like be really weird in front of machine? But then we did two drives, including the drive that we did last time and had a takeover. And this time it was zero intervention. And it did the drive back, zero intervention. So I mean, the capabilities of this thing is it just works. It just you sit there hands free and it's just this incredible feeling when you just say, "Okay, take me back to San Francisco," and you just sit there and you don't have to do anything and it just takes you all the way back. and can just handle so much complexity so smoothly like a human. Like it really is something. They're definitely not sort of overhyping it. They're kind of underhyping it. And, you know, people sometimes kind of like hear one person say something on social media and something, right? And people tend to post about the things that go wrong. They don't post, well, it drove me in a straight line for half an hour and nothing bad happened, because that's boring. They expect it. Their expectations are continually rising. So just because one person says there's some issue doesn't mean it's actually worse than 12.3. It doesn't mean it's worse than 11. It just means that they had an issue in their neighborhood. How common is that issue? Well, we don't know. It may be something that's very rare, that's isolated to their area. It may be more common. Um, and, a lot of things that seem really weird or really crazy are just sort of minor issues in the model sometimes. Like I heard a lot of people say, well, how can they roll this out? I saw somebody say that it drove on the wrong side of the road. And yeah, that is a bad error that they probably want to fix. But at the same time, the model sometimes can drive on the wrong side of the road when it needs to, right? So something minor, such as just thinking there was debris in the road or something, could result in that. Or, for example, maybe it thought it was a double yellow or something like that. So, it sounds like, oh my God, it's driving on the wrong side of the road, but, the human won't let it. It'll just take over and put it back where it belongs. And they'll just sort of refine that. I mean, these types of things happen with new models, but it doesn't mean that all the good things about the model don't exist or that it's not better. It just means that there's some bugs that need to be fixed. So, don't think just because one person said, hey, I found an issue that we can't roll it out or anything. They're just sharing the issue so that the team can fix it and nobody sees the issue, right? So it's important to share things. It doesn't mean that, the update can't go out or anything. Almost every drive I have is zero intervention. It's crazy.
Yeah, it sounds like there's solid progress. Omar, if I think a lot of us remember the step change from version 11 to 12.3.6. If you were to say that's 100% step change, how would you kind of describe the percentage improvement from 3.6 to 4.3?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to kind of compare. Obviously, V11 to V12 was a huge change that just made so many things better. So I don't know if you could necessarily call it a leap of that magnitude, but it does drive a lot better. And the fact that it has no nag, in some ways, I think makes it a bigger leap in the user experience because, I mean, like you just kind of have this moment where you're just sitting there and you're just watching the road, but drive after drive, it just does it without any intervention. And then you have this realization like, wait a minute, why am I even paying attention? And obviously, this is a new build. There probably are issues. I'm certain I'm going to have a critical intervention eventually, but it hasn't happened yet. So you start to, and this hasn't happened yet, but you can start to see down the road where the paying attention isn't really good for anything, right? And at that point, it's just driverless, right? And they're just getting very close. You can start to see it. And what matters is, do people believe that driverless is coming? Because if people start to believe that driverless is coming, they start to act very differently, right? It's kind of like inflation expectations. When people expect inflation, then often we get inflation because they start to act like inflation is coming. If people are seeing what I'm seeing, they're experiencing zero intervention drives, they're realizing, okay, wait, they're asking me to pay attention, but really it didn't matter if I paid attention or not because most of the time nothing's happening. And once you get that to a high enough level of reliability that you can actually say, hey, in a year this thing crashes less than a human, then you just turn the attention off the attention monitoring off, the same way we turn the nag off. It's just a completely artificial thing. The car is actually driving around and doing these drives on its own. The human is just there because we're not confident in it yet. But the progress they're making on training isn't showing any signs of stopping. I mean, it just
Yeah.
seems inevitable at this point.
Jimmy.
Just gonna say there's two things to remember here. Negative videos equal clicks and views. So when people put like bad stuff out there, it generates a lot of likes. The other thing is normal everyday driving is a critical intervention. It's just that people don't put that they swerved or that they did this because that's just normal driving. You're actually having a robot. You have to go with that mindset that you're not in control of the vehicle. And so when it does something wrong, we call it a critical intervention. But the people who don't have anybody driving for them and they're driving, they don't report those things because that's just normal driving. Normal driving is pretty garbage. That's why no one ever recorded a video of them driving an F-150 down the highway and said, "Oh man, I had a swerve because of this person, or I had to miss my exit because of this." Why? Because that's just normal to everybody.
Thanks, Jimmy. Yoda.
Yeah, the other thing I'm becoming increasingly confident in is the value of FSD. Um, as I mentioned in the last space, I've kind of going without FSD subscription for the current month because I'll be traveling to Asia in a few days. And so I'm definitely feeling unconfident actually when I'm driving, and I see myself making, not non-safety critical, but I'm making mistakes on the road. I'm distracted, and so I could definitely see with a couple more iterations of version 12, uh, FSD will become something you will not be able to get off of. And in fact, I think, as I mentioned, Mrs. Yoda is asking me to subscribe.
That's great. That's great. Let's see. Hey, Omar, there's a rumor out there that Buick is going to license FSD. What do you think about this rumor?
Yeah, I think this stemmed from a joke tweet that Dirty Tesla made that someone took seriously. I would be shocked if Buick was licensing FSD. I mean, Buick, of course, is a division of General Motors. It's not known as particularly cutting edge. It's supposed to be one of GM's nicer brands, but I mean, the reputation it has is just that it's for old people. So I don't know, maybe they do need FSD, but obviously if General Motors were to do a deal with Tesla, it wouldn't be just for the Buick brand, right? I mean, that would be extremely weird if just Buick gets FSD, right? So General Motors obviously sets their autonomy and ADAS strategy corporate wide. And their strategy involves Cruise, which is their sort of struggling robotaxi company that got its permit pulled. They have their own Super Cruise and Ultra Cruise technology. So it would be a huge, huge move for GM to abandon all that. I don't think it's likely, obviously.
One thing about Buick is, while in North America we think of it as like what your grandparents would drive, apparently it's huge in China. So if someone could maybe look it up, I think they're one of the most popular brands for some reason there.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, American brands are always very popular in other countries. You'd be surprised. Like, for example, in Turkey, going to the Starbucks is like, is like an event. Like groups of friends will get together and go to Starbucks together. They'll dress up for Starbucks or McDonald's, which is really interesting to me. Anyway, at the top of your screens is a question: which car brands would be most and least surprising to license Tesla's FSD? I asked this 2 days ago, and I don't remember a Buick answer. I think people are convinced at this point that Ford is going to be the first one to license FSD.
Look, I mean, I think the only company that is going to have the lack of pride necessary to license FSD is going to be a Chinese company. Chinese have a different culture, right? They don't believe in originality as much. They'll just say, okay, well, let's just make a car that looks exactly like a Tesla. If they can actually just get Tesla's ADAS, if FSD supervised obviously is approved in China first, then there's like 90 different startup brands of EVs, many of them failing, that would love to license FSD to have a chance at relevancy.
Edward.
Hey, yeah, I was thinking the same thing, but which company from China would actually do that? I was thinking of a bunch of different companies, but it didn't make sense considering what they were doing with their own technologies. So it just, I don't know. Do you have any idea who it would be, or top two or three?
Omar?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one that you'd love to see is BYD. I think they're working with NVIDIA maybe on developing some solution, but I mean, if that doesn't work out well, then obviously Tesla's willing to be a supplier. There's also, Neo, Xpeng. Xpeng has always been sort of heavily influenced by Tesla, heavily inspired by Tesla, if you want to say it that way. They tried to steal the autopilot source code. Well, hey, you guys tried to steal the autopilot source code. Why not just use FSD? Of course, they now have their own X-Pilot ADAS, so they'd have to give up on that, and that seems kind of unlikely. So, basically anybody who's licensing Mobileye right now, they're probably a candidate to replace that Mobileye supplier relationship with Tesla.
Earlier, I also asked, this is a question that Omar hates, but I asked my followers when they think the first 1,000 Robotaxi rides is going to happen, and Edward had the most optimistic answer. Edward, would you like to share with us your reasoning why you believe it's going to happen in 2025?
Well, yeah, I think it's similar to ChatGPT, but not obviously to that extreme. But I think there's going to be a lot of people that sign up for this initially. I mean, just pretty much all the Tesla people that are even have Teslas or even thinking about having a Tesla. Maybe they couldn't afford a Tesla. I think there's a lot of those people out there that want a Tesla but can't afford it. I think those people are going to be on the network like immediately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this question obviously brings together a lot of different questions. So you're assuming the technology will be ready by next year, and I think Yoda thinks actually Yoda has the even more optimistic answer in the reply there. He says August 31, 2024 at the latest. Don't be shocked. And now we have a coffee bet again. Cappuccino, decaf cappuccino extra hot. He likes. I don't know, Yoda. Omar, a lot of answers in that tweet. Lots of answers about 2024 and 2025. Maybe this is what's driving this stock higher. People are starting to believe in the robotaxi future.
Robotaxis are real. Accept robotaxis into your heart, because people are still acting like they're not a real thing. I don't take human driven cars anymore. Yesterday I had to go to my friend's house. I didn't want to worry about parking. I said, okay, I'm going to take a cab instead of driving myself. I had just gone and done a bunch of FSD drives with Machine and his mom. So I said, okay, I'm going to call Waymo. I called the car, showed up in a few minutes, took a driverless ride over there. Didn't look at what the car was doing, just minded my own business. I was on my phone doing work. I came back and I looked at my safety score stats, and out of 69 miles I had driven, 68 were handled by FSD. So only minor parking maneuvers, pulling in and out of my garage. That's the only driving I did. And all of the other driving I did was handled by software, on whether I was calling a cab with the Waymo or driving in my own car. So how dumb do you have to be still be in denial while this is happening? Yes, it's not happening everywhere. It's not happening in Wyoming or Tennessee or Texas. Well, actually, it is happening in some parts of Texas, but it's happening. It's starting to happen. It's going to take time for this to play out, for it to scale all over the world, but the writing is on the wall. And there's really no longer a debate. Machine and I both agreed last night that it's definitely possible. They have demonstrated it's definitely possible to build a pure vision robotaxi. The only debate we really have now is how much inference compute and what model size is needed to achieve a pure vision robotaxi.
Well, I think that's the quote of the day. Accept road taxis into your heart. Yoda?
Yeah, Omar, how do you think they're gonna technically solve the last few meters, pulling into the driveway for the rider? Is it through voice commands? Hey, pull up a little bit forward in the driveway where there's a basketball hoop. I don't know, but how do you think that will be solved? Because it's not on like GPS maps.
Well, I mean, it doesn't need to be on a GPS map. You just have to, well, first of all, a robotaxi is not going to pull into your driveway. It just pulls over and drops you off. But for a personal car, you just look at the house number or the GPS location of the house, and you just look at the driveway and you just drive onto it. So you just show the model clips of people driving onto driveways, and then it just knows how to do it. It knows how to slow down. If there's a dip or something or an incline, they'll just know how to pull into driveways and pull into garages and pull out of garages, pretty much just like you would as a human. I mean, the focus of the team right now isn't really on pulling into the driveway. Like, you can pull into the driveway. That's sort of like a minor convenience. What really is the focus is driving down the miles per intervention of that core part of the drive, the part the robotaxi has to do, which is curb to curb. And the drives I did yesterday, if you see the drive I did with Machine, for example, you'll see the thing going parking spot to parking spot without intervention over some pretty crazy terrain. So this is really what a robotaxi has to do: curb to curb with no intervention every time. So they're really focused on that. Getting into a driveway and pulling into a parking spot, summon, banish, that is going to work pretty much just the same way as the core part of the drive. You just show it clips and it learns how to do that.
Yeah, I guess maybe there's a way. It's almost like setting up a rag on the LLM training side where there's a proprietary data set related to these kind of driveway situations, and maybe the
Look, I mean, if you
robotaxi.
really care that much about it pulling into your driveway, there's a very simple solution. Just paint lane lines onto your driveway or get a piece of white tape. Go check out Ash Martian. She figured this out for her car. So you just put lines there and it'll just go park in your driveway. And then you can do auto park if you've got Summon. You can have it pull the rest of the way into your garage for you. So you don't have to wait for the Tesla team to do it. They will do it eventually for any driveway. But if you really must have it pull into the driveway, just give it a little visual cue and it'll be able to figure it out. And
Edward.
I have seen it pull into the driveway before on multiple occasions.
Edward.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience with that because I have a driveway that I have to go out my garage and then hang a hard right, and it's very tight. Once I went to 12.3.6, I do it from from inside of the garage. I activate FSD from inside of the garage, and it takes me out, hangs a right, even if the truck is kind of in the way, it still clears it, hangs a right, and it's a little shaky on the steering wheel, but it's just being careful not to catch a fence there, and then it gets out no problem, but it won't go back into the driveway yet. I think when everybody keeps doing this back and forth, it's training it maybe in ghost mode right now, that it could be training it or whatever. So I think, and I did the lane line thing. I did the tape on the thing, and it all automatically just popped up the spaces, and it automatically parked when I did the auto park. So I was like, man, this is perfect. So I just did it as a demo, and now I'm going to paint everything on once I figure out exactly where I want the car spots to be.
Interesting. So in the replies, long-term present shareholder says, white tape on garage floor makes it super easy to always back straight in. So people are putting tape in their garages. That's interesting. Like whatever works, man. That's great. By the way, just a quick reminder that if you DM Dirty Tesla, just at the top of the screens, if you DM Dirty Tesla, you will get FSD 12.4 right away. Right, Omar? That's what you did, right?
Yeah, that's what people are saying. I think it's the same people who found out that Travis was going to be the head of Robotaxi and that Buick was licensing FSD. So very reliable sources. Actually, that's how I started getting all the FSD updates first. I just DM'd him and he told me it's like you have to go into the service menu. I can't remember the exact steps, but you can DM him and ask him.
Yeah. And then when you DM him, also include happy birthday. Apparently it's his birthday today, so there you go. Joe, Maj, how are you? Joe, Maj? Yeah. Penises, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
What's your question?
Okay. What do you guys think of this Wabi company with their self-driving trucks that are supposed to be out next year? Have you heard anything about them? What are your thoughts?
I haven't. Omar, have you?
What are they called? Wabi?
Yeah, I was surprised to see a big article on Fox News on July 5th. It says Wabi's game-changing approach to self-driving trucks. AI revolution hits the road with self-driving big rigs. It's a big article, and they're spelled WAABI. They claim that they're doing all of this AI internal training that doesn't require millions of miles driven because it's all done internal. It sounds like BS to me, but I was a little surprised to even read this article, and further surprised that none of you guys have heard of it.
Okay. I'm reading their website and I'm like, huh? Safe, scalable. The next generation of autonomous trucking powered by generative AI. Generative AI? Like an LLM? Or a, image generation model?
Even Waymo got rid of their trucking, right? Didn't Waymo have an effort around autonomous trucks?
I think they still do, yeah. It's called Waymo Via.
Oh, really? Somebody who was big in the space canceled their program. I'm trying to remember who.
Yeah, one of the companies went bankrupt. I think it was Too Simple.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Too Simple was a SPAC. They went under recently.
Oh, Uber had an effort too. Uber Freight and Aurora, right?
Yeah, they sold it to Aurora.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know what Aurora's doing now.
Yeah, people thought that autonomous trucks was going to be the first place where autonomy. I mean, even Tesla, when they announced Tesla Semi back in 2018, they talked about it. For some reason, it's gotten to the back burner for most of these companies.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a really interesting market because you have a situation where the driving's actually pretty simple, right? You're on the highway, it's straight roads, you're not worrying about a lot of traffic lights and stuff. So things are much more standardized in a way. The driving is less complex than, say, navigating Times Square or something like that. But on the other hand, the potential, y- you know, consequences of a mistake could be much more catastrophic with a semi traveling at 80 miles an hour compared to, say, a city car traveling at 25 miles an hour. So that I think has kind of made it even more challenging to say we're going to let people do this and do it without a driver. And there's also been heavy union opposition. The Teamsters Union has tried to get legislation passed in California, for example, that would make it illegal to pilot a semi driverlessly. But then when you look at the size of the markets, and I've always just been kind of amazed by these trucks. You drive out on the highway like the five and you see all these trucks. It's just like this huge world behind the scenes, just the logistics of the United States. And I think ride sharing is like a $60 billion market or something like that in the United States. And freight shipping is like a $1.3 trillion market. And obviously, the vast majority of the value of an autonomous solution could actually be on the freight side, right? You can make a lot more money shipping freight, bottles of beer or whatever, compared to passengers. So it's really critical and it's in some ways pretty easy, right? Like once you get self-driving down, can I just have a truck that drives straight across the country? Yeah, you probably could. But it really needs to be even more nines of reliability for people to trust it when any minor mistake could be just catastrophic.
Hey Yoda, let's switch some gears. Actually, Edward has a question. Edward,
Yeah, I don't usually disagree with Omar, but I'm going to have to disagree with that. I think the truck isn't the issue on the highway. I think that's pretty much solved by Tesla. But I think it's more the issue of all the little windiness you have to do a truck in to get it parked and in different situations on small streets where they're literally going into another lane to block it just to do a left turn. There's so many complications with that. And I run into it on the street a lot of times when I'm on FSD, and I actually have to pull it off FSD because a truck is like sticking out in the middle of the road or something. So I think it's more when the truck has to get off the highway, personally.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, a truck does also need to drive on city streets autonomously if it's going to be driverless. So that would be by far the most challenging part. In general, operating a commercial vehicle is very different than operating a passenger vehicle. There would have to be a lot of specific development done on the particular nature of operating those commercial vehicles.
Alexander Christensen in the replies asks, Tesla Semi has been spotted with LiDAR. What is up with that?
Well, they're probably just training a vision model that can use the ground truth that sensor is generating, similar to what we see with the passenger cars they have. I mean, I just saw a Tesla outfitted with Luminar LiDAR driving down Twin Peaks the other day, and Tesla has been known to be Luminar's number one customer.
What do you think is the probability that this Robotaxi unveil is going to involve LiDAR? Like the purposeful Robotaxi will have LiDAR.
2%.
Yoda, what do you think?
No way. No way.
Yeah, that would be a shocker. I mean, that would be kind of crazy. Ken says Michigan allows driverless trucks. The state even allows a double hauler to be driven autonomously. If Ken could please request to speak, and maybe we can talk about this Delaware case that's going on right now. Omar, let's switch to that for a second. What do you think about I think it's today, right? What's happening today exactly?
Well, today, some Tesla shareholders and other parties spoke in opposition to the fee award, which is still being decided. The lawyers want a $7.2 billion payout in Tesla stock. This would be the largest judgment of any court decision ever. So, this amount has never been awarded in any court case. This would be number one biggest payout ever, what they're asking for. But obviously, that's reflective of the record size of the pay package. They say, we got it back, even though there's been another shareholder vote. They're kind of just ignoring that. We should get a fraction of that value. And actually, by Delaware standards, where Delaware typically has a larger percentage of the money saved the more you do to encourage lawyers to sort of go after big settlements, they say, what would be typical is maybe more like 33%, and we're only asking for 11%. So by Delaware standards, even though it's the biggest payout ever, you could make an argument that the sort of case law suggests that they should be getting paid maybe 3 times as much, maybe $21 billion. So, I think it's pretty crazy just given that shareholders both times sort of repudiated this and they said, look, we want to give our CEO this compensation package. And for them to kind of argue that they should be given, $7.2 billion when we've already voted and said we want to keep this in place, we weren't misinformed. It's kind of crazy that this is all just going on as if the vote didn't happen. But that's just kind of how courts work. It's often kind of strange, but we'll have to see what the judge decides. So, she could award a fee of, whatever amount, or she could just say, hey, look, maybe in light of new evidence, in light of the vote, this should be a very small fee, maybe like $10 million, or maybe nothing at all, as it looks like you may not have actually saved shareholders anything. So we'll have to see what the judge decides. That's kind of beyond my pay grade to understand the legal technicalities of this. Maybe Ken has some thoughts, but they're essentially hearing from different lawyers from all kinds of different Tesla shareholders who are appearing and basically arguing that this $7.2 billion payout would be ridiculous. Just to give you some context on, what this kind of means for this law firm and what they typically get paid. So there were about 37 lawyers who worked on this case, right? And if the 37 lawyers were, let me see, I'm trying to find this tweet. Yeah, so this is basically $370,000 an hour for those lawyers. Now, those lawyers normally bill at a rate of $275 an hour. So this would be 1,340 times higher than their normal hourly rate. It's obviously ridiculous. I don't think the judge is necessarily going to approve it, but she might. Um, and yeah, it would be the biggest payout ever. So we'll have to see what they decide.
Hey, Ken, what do you think about this?
I could do an hour dissertation on this topic, but I'm going to
Let's
keep
do it. We have
Uh,
exactly an hour actually. So
I,
have at
I,
it, man. Seriously, like this is the time to dig into these things,
seriously, I could have argued the motion this morning with Tesla.
Do it. Just do it right here. I'm sure the judge is listening.
I'm going to do it very simply, so hopefully everybody can understand. America's mining is the case that sets what standards are used to award attorney's fees in what cases. America's Mining through Dell, through AMC, the whole progeny down the line. It's pretty simple. If a common fund has been created, then they use the standards set out in America's Mining and Dell and the progeny, which would allow up to 35% of the common fund, depending on what stage the case was in. The problem here was there was no common fund created because no shares were issued. Okay. That differentiates this case from the Detroit firefighters case versus the Tesla board of directors, which the judge also has to decide how attorney's fees are going to be divvied up. In that particular case, the firefighters case, there was a common fund. In this case, there is no common fund. The judge put the parties back into the places they were in 2008, and no shares have been issued. Therefore, what do you do in this instance? In America's Mining, the standard, the case is if no common fund has been created, then the judge can award what's called lodestar fees. And according to the plaintiff's brief, their lodestar fees are roughly $15 million. So she can take that $15 million lodestar fee and add a multiple to it if she wants, because they did win the case technically. She found that the board of directors breached their fiduciary duties. And Tesla has argued if she goes that way, she should award up to 4 times that amount, or $60 million or $40 or $60 million, whatever you want to read it, in attorney's fees. And that's Tesla's position. The case law supports that position 100%. Okay, so Tesla used the case law. Tesla used the plaintiff's own statements and admissions in court via the transcript and their briefing. And they also used the judge's own language from her opinion to support their position. So I believe Tesla has a very strong position on this issue, and that the judge will agree with it and award only the lodestar plus maybe a small multiple. That's what I think will happen.
Okay, so how much is that approximately?
If I had to guess, she'd go lodestar maybe 2 times. So giving them, well, I'm just going to put a range. I'm going to say somewhere between 30 and 50 million.
Wow, that is a big drop. That's
Yeah.
a massive drop. From what they said.
Yeah, but
So what percent of what they requested is that? 1%? No, sorry, 10%.
Yeah, probably. I'll let the numbers people work that out. But you can't blame the plaintiff for asking, because if you never ask, you'll never get. So it's not unusual for plaintiffs to come off with these big numbers, and then you just argue down from there. And
So
then
they wanted $6 billion
right,
in legal fees, and you're
correct.
saying they're gonna get 50 million, right? Wow,
Under
that's
what the
1%.
yeah, under
Less
what
than
the
1%. Man, you should be the judge. We should vote you in for a judge.
you got to be appointed to that position. But
I'll appoint you. You are the judge. There you go.
but if she's following the law, that's what the law says. Straight out, very clear. It's been upheld for decades. If she goes off of that, then she's gone rogue, in my opinion.
Okay, let's hear what Bull 2035 has to say.
Hey, Ken, can you just explain what you mean by lodestar?
Yeah, lodestar is basically a calculation of the hours that the attorneys put into the case times their hourly rates plus actual costs. So if I'm the lead plaintiff attorney and my normal hourly rate is $1,000 and I worked 2 hours on the case, then I should get $2,000.
Okay, so the idea then is that a court's supposed to assess what's reasonable and not give someone, an unjust enrichment situation just because they happen to file a lawsuit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. Yes.
There's something weird going on with my X app right now. I can't see most of the listeners. Most of the listeners appear as if they're chiming in anonymous. But on the desktop version, I see Alex in listener mode. So if he can come up, I would love to have him on speaker board. Edward?
Yeah, question for Ken. As far as the
Speaker board. Edward?
yeah,
Is it gonna be
question
a
for
cash
Ken.
settlement
As
only?
far as
And we actually have a case on point on this issue. And I'm going to go back to the America's Mining case where the plaintiff's attorney won that case and they asked for stock in the corporation. And the Delaware Supreme Court said, no, but if the corporation would rather give you stock besides, cash instead of cash, then they could do it. But the decision is theirs, not yours. And I can't find any other case where stock has been awarded in lieu of cash. And if that ever happened, I can't imagine the shenanigans the plaintiff's attorneys would be up to and asking for compensation in cases.
No hands mode. Edward, no hands mode.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was the main issue to me, and the main problem is really the precedent that this could set in general for the future. I think that's really the big issue for a lot of companies. It's not just Tesla. I mean, this sets precedent for a lot of different lawsuits, massive frivolous lawsuits. If they let them get away with shenanigans, like you're saying, this is going to be massively problematic for the economy.
It could be. That's why they're not going to do it, in my opinion. There's no way they get an award of stock. It's just not. It'd be like a plaintiff's attorney asking to date Machine's mom, as an award. Hell, the court may do it at that
They'll
point
do
in
it for
time,
free.
Dude,
Yeah.
I left so hard and my head went back and I hit my head. Thanks, King.
The interesting thing about asking for shares is the amount of the award they're asking for has actually gone up just as a consequence of the stock price going up.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah, absolutely. But again, it's not going to happen. That's a pipe dream.
Oh my gosh. I can't imagine being in Machine's shoes right now. Just getting all these jokes from random people he's never seen before.
Even he made a joke about his mom last night.
In the car?
No, on his ex. He tweeted that I banged his mom.
Ken, when are we gonna find out the results?
Yeah, I'm going to clear up a situation here that's going around. Okay, we have this hearing today on the attorney's fees. We also are going to have a hearing in late July or August on Tesla's motion to vacate the original judgment. Okay. And then we're also going to have a proceeding potentially under Delaware section 204, 205 on the revote. So Tesla's attorneys are asking for 2 shots at the apple on the revote. One, in their motion to vacate, which I am 95% sure will be denied. And 2, on a motion under 204, 205 to allow the second vote, which I am 50-50 on their success on that one. So there's 3 there's 3 places where Tesla is going to argue and get two shots on getting the vote passed in Delaware.
Okay, thank you. Do you think she's going to refer to the vote that just happened?
In her decision on the attorney's fees?
Right.
No.
Okay. Interesting.
And she'll hold this decision until she hears everything else. That's the most logical way to handle it. Hear everything in the three stages and then make one pronouncement of what the decision is. And then she'll say yes or no to each one of those three things. So if she's going to do it, it's most prudent for her to do it under Section 205 to do what I call splitting the baby, awarding attorney's fees at between 30 and 50 million and allowing the grant or allowing the vote for Elon's comp to go through as a separate procedure.
Did you see the comments by D. Patel in live chat?
I have not.
She says, Chancery should require the attorneys to understand the equitable relief would be unethical given the past post-vote by shareholders who agree they are not duped. It's an inherent impact on clean hands doctrine. What do you think about that?
I'm not sure I quite follow her reasoning. Or, oh, here it is over here. It's not unethical to do it. Chancery should require the attorneys to understand the equitable relief would be unethical. No, what equitable relief are you referring to? Are you referring to the rescission of the actual agreement? Or are you saying that awarding attorneys fees would be unethical because they proved the Tesla board breached their fiduciary duties?
Well, she's welcome to request to speak and talk about it. We don't want to have like a back and forth between someone on the speaker board and in live chat because of the delay. All right, Omar, from an investor's perspective, how material do you think today's events are?
It's a little over my head, to be honest. The legal system can sometimes be bizarre. You'd think in some ideal world, we just vote and this would be over, but there's a fair amount of proceedings and appeals, potentially months and years ahead of us on this case. So I'm just kind of assuming they'll figure it out and not paying too much attention to it. But I could see there being a ruling here that potentially is kind of shocking if they award a high amount of damages to the plaintiff.
Gary Black posted something earlier.
New speakers must stay on mute and raise their hands and wait until I call on them like everybody else. Ken, do you think Tesla will be able to award a similar stock-based compensation plan to Elon in the future?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They moved to Texas. They can do it under Texas law anytime they want, which is why in the big picture, I don't put a whole lot of stock into what's happening in Delaware. I think what Delaware, the proceedings that are going in Delaware, in my opinion, are just kabuki theater and not really necessary to the overall running of Tesla as a corporation.
Thank you. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, Gary Black was saying that McCormick will listen to arguments today, but won't actually rule on the actual comp for the legal fees until after she hears the Tesla's appeal later this month or August. Which, I was concerned that maybe she would possibly have a high fee and then it wouldn't matter, but markets might move. But if that's the case, it may be that all these arguments today is irrelevant if she accepts Tesla's appeal later this month.
Ken, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with Gary that she's not going to issue an opinion on this proceeding today until after she hears the plaintiff's motion to vacate in early August. And then I don't think she'll hear that one until the Section 204, 205 process is complete. So you're looking at months before she rules. Remember, there's 3 processes there. So she's going to hear all 3, and then she's going to make a decision. And the only way not to get this tied up for years in an appeal process is to do, again, what I call split the baby. Allow the votes as a separate action and award a small attorney's fee. Both sides are happy, and Delaware saves face, and everybody moves on.
Omar, we have a request, a demand, really, in the replies that we change behavior. And the demand goes from John Ross. Please stop talking about Machine's mom. She is a saint. He's taken me to heaven countless times. Anyway. All right. Are we done with this legal discussion? Ken says probably $50 million, less than 1% of what they requested. Ken, how confident are you in that prediction?
75%.
75%. So you're saying you think, and what do you think is the probability that they get something above $1 billion? Oh, I couldn't hear Ken. Can you guys hear Ken?
Did you just ask me if she's going to award something above 1 billion?
Yeah, what's the probability?
I would say probability of 0.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay. Well, great. Thank you very much. Omar?
Oh, I think I just unmuted by accident.
Yeah, me too. Getting some issues again with the space. Man, the other day they had a space, like some ex-space engineer had a space. And they invited, hosts, and I got tagged on it too. I joined. And they're talking about these like hundreds of minute details that, what should we improve? I'm like, dude, if it can just be reliable, that's like number one priority by far. And people are requesting these absurd things. Just focus on getting this reliable and the connections
People
and the
literally
audio
can't hear
quality.
each other.
Seriously.
There's like
what?
multiple people talking. Oh, what? I can't hear
Yeah.
each other. Okay, I'll drop down and come back. There's like a procedure now,
Yeah, exactly. Anyway.
I mean, it's not anyway. Like maybe, hopefully, Elon's hearing this. I mean, they need to make the app work well. There can't be these random bugs. It just makes it look really, shitty. And sometimes I'm seeing like display bugs. People's names are disappearing, or certain pieces of text that are supposed to be there aren't there. Um, you know, Somebody needs to get fired probably, and maybe someone more competent hired on their iOS team.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Spaces, I don't think they're training Grok on Spaces conversation just yet, right? Maybe when that happens, it'll become more of a priority. Right, Omar?
Yeah, or if they had some way to monetize it. I mean, I think all of their revenue is coming from their timeline ads product. So if they actually had revenue coming in from Spaces, then maybe it wouldn't be the redheaded stepchild of the product.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like a very easy thing to do if you can just put banners at the top. How come that's not that hasn't been done yet?
Yeah, I mean, they should put like a banner at the top, or have like a thing where you can say, okay, we're going to, take a break for 30 seconds. You push a button and some ads start playing. You go, take a dump. Then you come back, you say, all right, thanks, we're back. So
Yeah,
on and so
exactly.
forth. X
I
gets a
think
cut of the revenue.
I think that's a great idea. Like I can't actually go today the way it is. I have to hold it for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Jimmy,
And,
it's not good for my health.
and people
Zach?
pay a lot more for those audio ads than text ads.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
because I guess
Yeah,
you have to
actually
listen
audio's
to it.
better.
audio sticks with your mind and good jingles. But I was gonna say the whole spaces issue is actually super simple to solve. You just remove the host from actually being the host. So you could have a host create the room on a Tesla or sorry, an X server. And then what happens is like if Yaman's connection sucks, then it just doesn't matter because he's only a client. He's not the actual host. And then what that does is it allows people to do more things like host a room for a longer period of time. Because what they could do is they could have like Machine's mom be the co-host. And that means if Yaman drops, we can still listen to Machine's mom talking. And then when Yaman
And
returns,
because
he
I'm
just
there
gets
too,
all
no,
his admin.
because I'm at their place all the time, I can still chime in. That's a
Yeah, it's
great
the
idea.
same internet connection. Yeah. So
Yeah. Man, this is like I'm trained. My mind is trained right now. As soon as I hear Machine's mom, I start laughing. Sierra?
Hey, yeah, that's a great call out. And that is exactly the issue, is that the host of the space is in fact hosting the traffic of the space. So I requested I don't know if anyone in here is in the X Spaces community, feedback community, but they have people actually monitoring that. And I've been borderline harassing them about host handoff, to be able to hand off, like pass off the torch to your co-host so you can leave without the space closing. But I think they'll have to kind of reimagine the current architecture in order for that
Yeah.
to work.
Sounds like they need to re-architect the whole system. Because people want to just kind of like hang out sometimes. The worst part of being a host is you're just like stuck there, which is like the opposite of X, where you can just jump on for 5 minutes. They need to basically rip off Clubhouse and just copy that design and implement that, because this thing has so much potential, but doesn't seem like anybody cares. I don't know. And I thought, okay, Elon's getting into social networking, like they're going to expand, they're going to think of new things, they're going to ship new products, there's going to be tons of innovation, and they're going to start eating share of other people's markets. But it seems like they've mostly been on kind of the defensive. So when are they going to get on the offensive and actually make these products what they could be? Because we have to deal with a lot of bugs every day just to use this thing.
Yeah. Audio quality is number one for me. If you can improve audio quality, connections, these bugs in connections, and if you can let people monetize it with banners or audio ads, I mean, even if it's just audio ads, like I think that's a great idea. You push a button, 30-second ad, that would be so valuable, and nobody's gonna leave for a 30-second ad.
Little things like, for example, if you hear them speaking and their mic is muted, pop up a little label that says tap unmute before speaking. Little things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest thing that this app suffers from is Bluetooth integration. I mean, that's the number one with all my connection issues is Bluetooth. Like, I will join your space. That's why you see me, Yaman, join and leave like all the time. It's because like the space connects, but it will not connect to my Bluetooth headset or to anything, or it will just be silent and I'll be like, F this, I gotta leave. So that's why I drop all the time.
Bull 2035.
Hey, can I talk about autonomous vehicles for a minute?
Let me get Edward real quick. Edward?
Oh yeah, last thing on the X app. I've been seeing stuff on X about XTV, or they're working on the X app. As far as the putting it in the vehicles and everything, is that going to affect you a lot, Yaman, for having that? Is that a positive if they get amazing app on there, just like YouTube and Netflix and everything, and they get it on the car so people can listen and talk or do everything they normally do while they're on the road?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, like I am fully invested in this app getting better and distributed, people using it more often and more people using it around the world. Like it benefits all of us, you know. So okay, Bull 2035.
Hey, we talk a lot about FSD and Waymo for good reason. I posted in the chat. There's a company called Ride Beep, RIDE Beep BEEP, which has autonomous shuttles, and they go slow. But I was going to ask Omar. It looks like they have one at the Palo Alto VA system. I just didn't know if he's ridden it or not, but it's completely autonomous shuttle.
Ride deep.
Beep. I'm sorry. Ride Beep, RIDE BEEP.com. And I haven't ridden it. I want to, but they have one in Palo Alto, so it might be worth checking out. They're clearly not competing with Tesla. I'm not suggesting they are, but it is kind of neat though, normalizing autonomous vehicles.
Well, I mean, if we haven't heard about them, how are they normalized autonomous vehicles?
Well, because it looks like they're putting them at the Honolulu airport. There's Jacksonville Airport in Florida. There's a couple cities in Florida that are now putting them, Orlando and a couple suburbs of Orlando. And so I guess the idea is it's kind of neat because people get an opportunity and say, "Oh, this is neat. Never thought we could do this," and then perhaps they transition to Tesla or something a little better.
All right. Let's see. Tesla stock is flat at 252. And Omar says the fair value today is 300 with 12.4.3 already rolling out. He doesn't think the stock should be trading below $300 per share. Omar, how is the rollout going, by the way? It's now up to a few percent, right?
Yeah, it looks like 4 or 5%. Still a long way to go. 95% of eligible vehicles obviously don't have it, but I'm hoping we have a very different story by the end of the week.
Do you think this is the version that's going to go wide? Majority of the fleet?
I think it's going to go a lot wider, certainly. They've been pushing out new builds every week, so we could potentially see a 12.4.4 as early as next week. That could bring on people on the 2024.20 branch. But this is the first build that has gone wider than the early access group. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it at 25 to 50% by the end of the week.
All right. What else is being?
GM had to pay $145 million in fines. The legacy automakers are struggling. The Dodge vehicles bought by some police department are all failing. So, yeah, not really too much.
Let's see. Humanities, go ahead.
Yeah, this is for Omar, or anyone. How big are these pushes that have to be done on these rollouts of these software packages? Do you know, or how long
How
does it
big are
take?
the pushes? What do you mean?
Yeah, like 100 gig, 10 gig. Does it take an hour?
So, I mean, it's probably a few gigabytes. Maybe someone has more accurate information on that who looks at their router stats, but it's a few gigabytes. It's not an insane large amount of software. And it takes about 30 minutes on a Model 3 or Y to install.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are you holding on to your Rivian put?
Yeah, I am holding on to it. It's no longer in the money, but I'm confident that the market will eventually come to see uh, what's pretty clear.
I was looking at so I was looking at a bunch of charts today, Nicola's charts specifically. They went up 100% in the last year, about 4 times. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Yeah, Rivian's up today, 1545. I mean, it's pretty hard to short these things generally. The sentiment is so low that, you can see why a lot of these Tesla short sellers are losing money. But yeah, I think really in the case of Rivian, they have a great product which people love, but the financials are going to continue to be challenged. And I think the Q2 earnings release is going to be a key event that will really kind of illuminate how much runway they really have and whether they're going to be able to make it to R2 profitably or not.
Yeah. If you have any Rivian bulls in this space, they're welcome to come up. But I actually haven't found many Rivian bulls. Like a lot of people are fans, they like the products, but I don't know of many investors. Even the people who hold spaces and talk about the company, they don't hold shares. Anyway, Jeremy says, you guys should be selling Tesla Live Machines Mumber.
Sounds like a good name for like a heavy metal band. Machine's mom of the machine.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe we should do some merch. I like Omar's quote. I think Omar's quote should be on something. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone has one.
For the gentleman who was asking about Tesla size for updates, they range between 0 GB and 10 GB on average. 8 and 10 are major updates. Anything smaller is like 960 like megabytes, 800 megabytes. They're very incremental and tiny. And I know this information because I do monitor my networks. I was actually thinking about just publishing it all online. I never really thought about doing it before now.
Yeah, they typically distribute the diff rather than a full firmware image.
Yep, exactly.
Miss Libby. Miss Libby, go ahead.
Oh, hello. I just wanted to say hi. I'm just listening to your space. Yeah,
Hi.
sorry, I wasn't really concentrating. Sorry, it's just
Okay.
I'm just
Thank
sorting
you.
some things out in the background. But yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
Noah? Noah, you may unmute yourself and go ahead. All right. Looks like Noah's having a problem. But can you guys see Noah as a speaker?
I do not see Noah. No.
Okay. Noah, I'm gonna move you down and then send you a request to speak. That seems to work better for some reason. Omar?
So we are starting to get some of the Q2 sales tallies coming in. And one piece of sales data to note was that GM China sales were down 29% year over year in Q2 as the country moves more and more to EVs. So people were just talking about Buick and how big they were in China. Cadillac sales were down 47% year over year. Sales at Buick, the biggest US brand in China, slipped 40% to 81,000 units. So not a good quarter for GM in Q2 there.
Thank you for that update. I see a question for you. So I'm trying to kind of get these questions I ask throughout the day in like fine tuned a little bit. And sometimes when I ask two specific questions or like questions that should really belong to speaker board, I don't get many responses. Like for example, this one I pinned it at the top. Is AI advancing, accelerating, or moving at a steady rate? This is more of a question like people like you and Omar, I think, who are experts in the area. Or maybe another variant of this question is in the last, in recent months, what advancement do you think was the biggest, more consequential, kind of caught your eye in terms of AI development? What excited you the most in the last few months, let's say?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't unmute there. Oh, Omar, go ahead if you want.
Just the software running on my car, driving me
Well,
everywhere without any
aside,
intervention.
aside from FSD, obviously. Sierra?
So much. Hmm. Well, literally just today, I read that a study where they're using MRIs to extract MRIs and generative AI to extract thoughts into images with an 80% accuracy rate, which is nuts. There is crazy acceleration happening left and right in every field of AI every day. The models are getting faster, more advanced. We're getting more compute online everywhere. Yeah, I would say that it's continuing to speed up in acceleration. And like Omar, I'm constantly amazed by FSD. Also, the humanoid bots market has gotten really exciting. There are more and more humanoid bots being developed every day with more advanced skill sets, and like clone robotics can do some things that we as humans can't physically do with the way its anatomy is. So I wouldn't say that it's slowing down anytime soon.
Thank you. 88% accuracy, reading MRI images and translating them into thoughts. Basically reading minds, right? That's amazing. Maybe our cars will read our minds soon. Omar, what do you think about that? Do you think the Tesla will be reading our minds soon? Grok.
I mean, in a way, it kind of already does. It tries to read the mind of everybody it sees on the road and predict what they're going to do. I mean, sometimes it's kind of shocking, right? Like you are just driving and it just kind of slows down and you're like, okay, why did it do that? And then the guy on your right side cuts in front of you and you're like, wow, it knew that he wanted to do that. Or it just stops and then the guy ends up crossing the street. You're like, I didn't even see that guy. But how did it know that they wanted to cross the street? It can, and then yet when someone doesn't want to cross the street, when they're just walking on the sidewalk, then it responds appropriately to that too. So mind reading is kind of part of the problem that they're trying to solve, really.
Edward.
Yeah, I've got kind of something to pose to Omar here. Can you imagine, if possible, if we got maybe 2,000-3,000 cars or more on FSD all together in the same area and kind of had them all work in, I mean, go in different directions and different things in like a somewhat controlled environment, and see what happened, to see if they're going to have any conflicts with each other, to see how safe the world will really be, like a microcosm of the whole US being on FSD.
Yeah, that could be interesting to try next time we all get together. But I mean, my gut tells me it would probably not work well. Like they'd probably all start crashing into each other. I mean, I don't know. I'm just kidding. Maybe it will work, but it seems like kind of an unusual situation. Like, people may not really it may not be a situation they're used to, but maybe it'll just work beautifully, and there will be no interventions. I don't know. So yeah, that might be something interesting to try next time we have one of these Tesla meetups where you see all these Teslas getting together. Maybe they should just all get on FSD at the same time and see what happens.
Ipatio.
Hey, hello everyone. The last thing I saw in regards to AI that I found was quite impressive and important was what Apple announced recently. Not only with Apple Intelligence, but with deep integration. And for me, the key point here was that it's not only just another LLM, but it's the integration. So now the everyday people will be able just to open their email app and the AI will be there right in front of them. They do not have to.
Doesn't
go
Copilot
fetch it.
already do that?
Copilot?
Yeah.
Is this the sorry? Is this the Windows
Yeah,
thing?
that's okay. Yeah, Microsoft. Exactly. Okay, we're going to move on
Right.
from this topic.
Yeah.
We have Machine on the board. I'm going to talk about his mom a little bit. But in the meantime, just before that, I posted at the top, Tesla is up 3%. What's driving the stock? And someone replied, "Are you living under a rock?" That was my favorite response. Machine, welcome. I saw that you guys had a ride. People commented on your legs. They were positive comments. But I actually have something to tell you. I was thinking about you this morning, pretty early, at 6 a.m. Because I remembered my ex-wife used to have this, like I was kind of like gonna get up, and then my ex-wife had this saying that she, kind of insight. She said, "Why are you working so hard? Thousands of years from today, no one is gonna remember you." Which was very positive. And then I thought to myself, wow, in Machine's case, it's like 10 days. What do you think about that? Oh, he left. Did I hurt your feelings? What the hell? Grant?
I just heard people talking about Machine's legs, and I wanted to come up and ask about the gym routine, but nothing else. How's it going?
It's going well. Grant, I was in the space yesterday, and I think people were really rude at you in that space. Just want to say, you're not that bad.
I appreciate it. I thought it was, it didn't bother me. I just thought it was kind of like actually difficult to understand where it was coming from because it was pretty, aggressive. I don't know, weird.
It's all right. Machine, welcome back.
I'm sorry, I just missed the rest of your joke. I got some disconnection. You were talking about your ex-wife saying no one's going to remember you in 1,000 years, and then what?
I said in your case, it's 10 days.
Yeah. Well, I think my wife is going to forget about me in about 10 days. So, yeah, that's great. But what people aren't going to forget about me is my legs, which is I was surprised. I didn't really, see many good images from the video there. But it is true. My legs are real and they're spectacular. Imagine what doing both weightlifting and lots of running does for one's legs. They look phenomenal. So, and someone actually offered me a massage. I don't how do I become Machine's masseuse? This is getting very disturbing.
Where did they do that? Did they just tweet at you, or
this was in the
comments on YouTube? Really?
YouTube comments, yeah. Disturbing stuff.
What does your wife think about that?
My wife's not happy about anything.
Well, we can't talk about that offline, but your mom is happy, I'm sure.
Yeah, you see, I sabotaged everyone by making my own joke. I self-owned myself, and everyone now is just totally confused. How can you make fun of yourself It's reverse psychology, my friends. Now you think you're gonna make a joke about my mom. It's not gonna feel as funny to you because I already did it.
Question for you. So you went on now. What was the last version you went on the ride with Omar? Was it 12.3?
It was 12.3 dot something. I don't remember
Okay.
which
So maybe 12.3.6, and this is 12.4.3. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying in the video, to be honest, it's hard to perceive much of a difference. There's obviously differences because the drives were different. There was different interactions, but I couldn't tell. The only main thing I could tell was that I think this was a bit more of a conservative build with how it had approached intersections.
All right, let me before you kind of go on that. Have you changed your view on when the first commercial paid Robotaxi ride is going to happen? Let's start there. Let's start from the punch.
I mean, I think not because of that drive per se, but I would have to say I'd have to probably start pushing it back a bit. If this is the claimed version from the doofus CEO who's saying this is supposed to be like 5x or 10x better than 12.3,
he might be listening, Machine. Elon might be listening.
I don't know why people
be nice, be kind. He's working hard.
People are saying, "Oh, what would you do if Elon was in this?"
He is at Giga Texas overseeing. Can you just make sure you're muted when you're not talking? We're getting feedback.
I'm just saying
it's bouncing from your speaker into your mic.
Oh,
you've been in this space for 2 years now, and you still can't manage your microphone.
Maybe it's better over here. All I can say is, if Elon was in this space listening, I would speak exactly the same way because I would speak this way to him.
No, you wouldn't. There's no
absolutely
way.
I would.
If you were the speaker here, you would say those things. No fucking way.
I'd be like, listen, because no one else is telling this. This is why he needs to hire a real person like me, who's like, dude,
he's
you sound like
when you're on the beach.
You sound
when you're
like
on the beach putting suntan. I will because you're being rude. He's so at the factory lining up GPUs.
So what, would you ask your kids or any other person in your life that they're better because they didn't take a vacation on July 4th? Like, this is so pathetic. You would not ask this of any other real person in the world. And this guy's over here tweeting at Zuckerberg. Of course, Zuckerberg's kind of douchey, but like Musk just seems so petty and it's pathetic. It's utterly pathetic. And if you're listening, Elon,
how is that pathetic?
Yes,
what are you talking about? How is that pathetic? Why? I don't understand. Why is that pathetic? He's working hard for you. Actually, not for you because you're not there.
That's fine. Go work hard. But why do you have to go tweet at someone else who's having fun? It just makes you seem insecure. And he's like 50 years old, overweight. We need to get your legs in shape, Elon. Call me.
How many daily spaces are there about Meta?
Who cares? Zuckerberg's living the dream. All right. This guy is a billionaire. He's taken some days off, vacationing in Lake Tahoe. He's actually married successfully, unlike Elon. And, I think he's happy. So who cares? Why are you so worried about anyone else?
How many kids does he have? How many kids does he have?
Wait.
How many kids does Zuckerberg have?
I don't know, 2, 3?
Exactly. So by that measure, Elon at least 5x more successful, and that's what we know so far.
That we know of, right? But probably in order of magnitude.
That he knows of.
Exactly. And it's probably exponentially increasing.
Exactly. I mean, come on, though. Like, let's say, for example, 100 years from today, which entrepreneur, which founder do you think is going to be more favored in history books?
Well, Elon, no doubt, but that's a totally separate question about people living their lives and how you critique them. And, just personally, I find his behavior to be pathetic. And that's what I'm saying. That's a real world assessment of anyone I would give.
Well, he probably thinks the same about you. Let's go to Grant.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Yaman, I agree with you. I think Machine's talking a big game about how he's going to get in Elon's grill, tell him the truth, all these things. And my full expectation is that he would do what everyone else on the space would do, either faint upon seeing him or take a knee and kiss his little pinky finger the way that he expects from his minions.
Yeah, I agree. Machine.
I think some of you need to meet me in real life, because I am exactly the same way I am on the
God,
space.
no.
And you guys, I believe, are all the same way. Pathetic.
Omar,
Tesla nerds.
how does meeting Machine in real life feel like? Because I noticed he is so much tougher in this space than he's in an enclosed space with you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think he understands that there's more to it than kind of the dismissive comments he makes on this space. I don't think Elon is necessarily working to show up Zuckerberg or to be petty. You know, obviously they are competitors in the social networking space, but I think he just likes to work. I don't think he's necessarily saying other people need to work or, you know, people should be like him or it's a way of life for everybody. He says, look, that's great. You know, enjoy the boat, but I'm just working. And yeah, he's working because isn't married, right? If he had a wife, she would probably make him go do something for the 4th of July instead of working. Yeah, maybe he could actually use some exercise and getting out on the jet ski, but I mean, that's just who he is. He's just at the cluster. And I mean, that's really important to get up. This next gen model for hardware 4 is going to be really, really crucial to getting the miles per intervention to where we want it to be. So, I mean, I didn't work on the 4th of July. I mean, I did tweet, but I think we're better off that he's doing it. You know, you can say you don't like him or boo, you know, I don't support him till the work, but that's just who he is, right? And I'm driving around and not touching the wheel as my car takes me around because he's kind of nuts and this is what he
Dude,
does.
all Zuckerberg has achieved so far is an app. Okay. And Elon now has X. You can't compare Facebook to X. There's nothing that Zuckerberg has done that compares even remotely to Tesla or SpaceX. Give me a break. Go ahead.
I mean, these are just straw man arguments. No one said Zuckerberg
No, it's not.
did
No,
more.
it's not. It's not
No
a
one said
so
you
man.
created some
Not even
argument out of
close.
thin
They're
air.
not. They're not even in the same
Who said they were
league.
close? That's not the
Yeah, but
argument.
you're comparing. Like
I'm
I
not
don't
comparing.
think anyone. Go ahead.
My God, you are. Just let me speak. Let me speak. I am not comparing the two. All I'm saying is him replying to Zuckerberg's tweet about his vacation just shows him to be pathetic as a person, not as a capitalist.
Oh my God. Edward.
Yeah, I know Machine is lying because I watched the video, and everybody should watch the video of Omar driving with Machine. Okay, up the hill, down the hill, crazy tight roads. You've got to watch that. But Machine was like,
Edward got cut off.
Did I miss something?
Suspense.
Machine was like, what?
You literally cut off right there.
Well, let me just
Outside-
add quickly.
Elon fired the guy who was keeping the stream running.
I was like, I don't know who's ungrateful. Who's more ungrateful right now between Machine and Grant? Machine guy.
Well, so I just, to be clear, people, like people don't listen well. It's like idiocracy in this space because they go watch the video and they're like, look, Machine, you're converting Machine. And because I get excited for the drive, and I do get excited because it's an excellent, very cool software. I've always been optimistic on that, and in fact, I was too optimistic on it for a few years. And the reality is, there's a vast difference between an exciting, cool technology and something that's Robotaxi capable. And I keep my singular eye, on that ball. Okay, and so that's the key thing, and that's why I sound cynical. Is that I'm concerned about robotaxis, and this software had, it's cool. It's still, running into barriers, road barriers, can't figure out the right lane. And
When did it run into any road barrier?
Well, it was headed that way, and you had to intervene, and you were
No,
very
no,
upset.
it was going through the open space. There wasn't going into any road barrier.
Oh, he was so upset the first drive, like the first 5 minutes with me, of course. As soon as I'm in the car, this thing starts misbehaving. And you can just tell Omar's body language was stiffening.
No, I mean, for the most part, it did everything perfectly. But when we got in the car, machine gave it a destination that it couldn't get to, right? So then it starts driving and it's like kind of going back and forth between lanes, but it actually kind of made sense because it was trying to get into the right lane where it needed to be, but then it could see that there were lines for parked cars. And then it actually did need to be in the right side. So it was a little bit confusing. Obviously, it's like a little bit of bugginess, undesired behavior. And then it had to turn left instead of going straight. And then it couldn't get to where it was going, but it didn't try and drive into the road closed sign like some older versions would do. It actually just kind of pulled over and recognized that it couldn't get there. Then I gave it an accelerator push. It went around the block, and then it tried to get in the other way, but there was a do not enter sign that it ignored. So then I took over. Then the other drives were both parking spot to parking spot, zero intervention. And it was like this crazy hill. The road was like this tight, and there were multiple cars coming. And it handled the negotiations with all the other cars and did every drive without any intervention, completely hands free.
Yeah. Machine, can I just say thank you for
And
taking me on this ride?
Machine isn't dumb. He understands what a technological feat that was. I mean, he was in the car saying, "Wow, it's amazing how much diversity of situations it can just handle." But, I obviously everybody agrees it's not Robotaxi ready yet. But when you can see it just moving so strongly in the direction where the miles per intervention is just decreasing every month, they're putting out major new builds. And it's just really useful for us to use today, hands free self driving. That is worth getting excited about. You can't say Robotaxi is exciting, but every step towards it isn't exciting. It's becoming so good that the line between it and a robotaxi experience is kind of blurring. Like it's going beyond the limits of what humans can perceive, if that makes sense. Because we
Yeah.
only kind of give it a few miles of pretty easy driving typically.
Grant and that machine.
Yeah, a couple of things. First, I think it's interesting. I do not think that Elon's pathetic. I don't really like him, but I wouldn't call him pathetic. I do think he's incredibly petty. I think that there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I'm a fairly petty person. If anyone's watched The Last Dance, Michael Jordan was a wildly petty person. I just think it's interesting that people aren't willing to concede that Elon's petty when in my mind he's wildly petty. That is what it is. I wanted this ride that you guys went on, Omar Machine, I think is really funny. The image of Omar stiffening up as the car makes mistakes is just comical to me, but I can kind of see it. I want to highlight that the comment you made around, for the most part, it did everything perfectly is good, but I mean, that's just never going to be enough for a Robotaxi. Obviously, I appreciate you just said it's on its way, whatever, but like, for the most part, they did everything perfectly. Could probably be said of most drivers who careened off cliffs and died, or most fatal auto accidents in one way or another. So I just highlight that that is not really the excuse that you're trying to make it.
Machine.
Just watch the video and decide for yourself what you saw, okay? These guys dismissing it, it's never going to be a Robotaxi. How many people predicted it would be able to do this today on a 2016 Tesla, right? I mean, this is a big deal, what's happening here. The naysayers are just looking increasingly foolish. It just does every drive without any intervention, hands free. There's no more asterisks. It just is starting to work.
Yeah. Machine.
For the most part, the play that Abraham Lincoln saw was great.
Humanity.
Too soon.
Humanities.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up a point that's kind of on my mind. That's we see this improvement happening. It's obvious if you watch videos, especially the ones that Omar puts out, that there's improvement occurring. Has anyone charted the rate of improvement and the decrease in interventions and put that on a timeline to anticipate the release of Robotaxi and when those two might come together? Because in my opinion, that's really all that matters. And I agree that it's not perfect, but I also agree with what Omar's been saying, that people need to take a step back and look at the improvement that has been made, because it's mind-boggling and phenomenal that we're sitting here today with software that's driving our vehicles at 99% problem free. I mean, it's just incredible.
Okay. Thank you. We have 15 minutes, 15-minute warning. If you're looking for that data and graphs, go to TeslaFSDtracker.com. Elias does a great job accumulating data, crowdsourced data, and he presents that well as well. TeslaFSDtracker.com. Omar?
What's different now compared to past periods is that we have a formula for improving the performance of FSD that doesn't require really a series of breakthroughs, anything. It just requires kind of scaling up. You add more compute, you add more data, you train a model that's 5 times larger, and it just keeps driving better and better with fewer and fewer interventions. And if we just follow that, if we just sort of turn the GPUs on that we've already bought in the data center we're building, and we just continue to train the models, train bigger models, train hardware 4 models, the miles per intervention will keep falling pretty much automatically.
Yeah. Machine, you said you're going to push back your timeline. Can you please come up with a new timeline while Grant talks? And then maybe we'll see if there's a copy bet to be made there. Grant?
Yeah, I mean, it is making progress, and I think it's exciting. But in my mind, when we talk about taking a step back, I think the right way to take a step back is to look at where it is versus where it needs to be for actual robotaxis. And it's still multiple orders of magnitude short of where it needs to be. I think that, to Omar's comment that it's automatic, the improvements, I think that flies in the face of what Elon said coming out of the shareholder meeting when he said, actually, it's kind of hard. Like, we don't know which version's better. You know, you make a tweak to the weighting on this one and that thing gets better, but then this other thing gets worse. Like, my view of the tech right now is that it's getting better, but it's kind of not automatic by any stretch. They're working on it.
Yeah.
It's taking longer than expected, and it's difficult. I want to ask one more question. Yaman, this is the question I was going to ask on the space yesterday, or I tried to. Do you think that there'll be anything disclosed around FSD take rates or anything to do with that, you know, kind of the performance, users, anything for that line of business? I would love to see it. I think if there's a good number, they would disclose it. If they don't have a good number, I don't think they'll disclose it.
Yeah, I mean, they can disclose something, but is it going to be material? I don't know. I don't think it's going to change the rhetoric too much. We have other hands and 10 minutes to go. Noah.
What's your prediction for Zooks and when they're going to be commercially viable or ready? Because I read today that
They're going to be as successful as Cruise.
Oh,
EGOD. EGOD 333, 321. Edward.
Yeah, I think the biggest jump was from, and I think this is hard to quantify, and I think that's why Grant might have trouble quantifying this, is that from V11 and V12, they're different animals. That's like comparing a dog and a cat. They're not the same thing. The neural nets, you could see once we went to V12, that the computer starts to learn. It's starting to learn as they keep going. Now they have to figure out how it's learning and how it's getting better. I understand and I agree with that, but I don't agree that it doesn't matter what happened 2 or 3 years on V10, V11, whatever. V12 is not the same animal.
Grant.
I appreciate that. I'm talking specifically about the dot releases though, within V12. I'm not seeing the progress that would be necessary to show an exponential curve and progress towards like 100,000 miles per accident or something like that. It's stalling out.
Alexander.
Hello, all great people. Hello, machine. I have a question for Grant. Do you have a short position in Tesla right now? And if so, do you need help to move to Sweden? Because we are really good social settings here.
Machine.
Hurray, Leggett.
Det är så jävla bra är det.
Yeah.
All right, Omar.
Yeah, I think the real question to ask is, at what point does FSD revenue become material? And right now it's about 1 to 3% of revenue for the 2023 calendar year. If they could get it to, let's say, 10%, 20%, then it starts to become a lot more material part of the mix. And I think for the first time here with no nag FSD for $99 a month, they have a really clear value proposition for why you should pay them $99 a month or $8,000, which is to remove the nag. And the software is also extremely good to the point where they're going to be wowed driving it at the fact that it can handle an entire drive, even in very complex traffic. So, Robotaxi, of course, is a much larger value than just providing driver assistance. But this has something that has the potential to increase revenues on software as well as increase sales in the interim leading up to Robotaxi. And if Robotaxi really takes longer to get to a generalized level than people expect, they'll be in a great position because they actually have a profitable cash flow generating business compared to the others that have a cash burning business.
Omar said the real question to ask is when will FSD revenue become material? And that question is at the top of our screens. I define materiality for Tesla as $1 billion. So when will annualized FSD revenue exceed $1 billion? The question is at the top of our screens. Reply to that question. The questions I asked throughout the day help support this space and also inform the discussions here. It allows to see what people think, how people think, what we need to address, what we need to discuss, where there's a good debate. So please reply to those questions. Grant.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic I think is, really important. I actually, Omar cited 1 to 3 billion of FSD revenue, I believe, last year, which I just don't know. I mean, I think there's a chance they were exceeding $1 billion a few years back when the take rates were a lot higher. I think there's a chance FSD revenue's gone down, but I would just like to know. I mean, if they had a large take rate, that's something that would convince me to, potentially exit my shorts. I think Omar obviously believes that this is a product with a compelling value prop, as he just said. I don't, to be honest. And the way to prove it is seeing whether or not people are buying it and paying for it. It's just a black box that, to the points everyone's making, should absolutely be disclosed in some form.
Omar.
Yeah, I think it was higher than $1 billion in 2023. So if you assume that per Troy's numbers, the global take rate 7% and the North American take rate is 14% at $8,000, then that's about 125,000 or about 6 or 7%.
But I think his estimates are pre-subscription option. So when the subscription option came out, obviously that dropped purchase. I don't think many people are purchasing FSD anymore. I think people are subscribing to it now. So when you do the math, let's say 300,000 people subscribe to it today.
Well, the subscription option isn't actually talked about at the purchase stage at all. So the number of people who order with it has stayed relatively constant.
So you think even today, 10% of purchases buy FSD? I don't think so.
7% of people globally, 14% of people in the United States.
Yeah, I'll take the under on that. I mean, we can ask Troy. I'll ask Troy in the DMs and see what he thinks about that. But I think let's see, what do you think, Brent?
I just don't know. I mean, honestly, I know this isn't popular, but I know the Yipit data business. That is a good business. It's valued at like a few $1 billion. Carlyle invested a bunch a couple of years ago. I've met the founder and know the CFO. Like, I believe that data is likely pretty real. I know that there are arguments around the timing and whether maybe the cohorts have been given enough time to mature and convert. But at the same time, I think it's pretty low. I don't know. I don't think, to your point, Yaman, that a lot of people would be paying out of pocket the full ticket at this point when, I mean, it'd be crazy to not do 1 month on subscription before buying the full thing outright because you don't know if you're going to like it or not. And then if you choose to buy it, it's because you really, really believe the story that the price is going to go way up and all this sort of thing. And I just don't know that many people are going to have that level of conviction.
Jimmy.
The reason why people would buy it at point of purchase is because they can roll it into their loan.
I know. I've been saying that, but they don't. You know, but there is no data. I mean, even Troy, I don't think has updated that graphic in a while. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll check it again with them again. But Machine, what do you think about this discussion? Do you think people are purchasing FSD at 14% US, 7% globally today?
That seems too high.
What do you think is the figure?
I could see in the US.
Purchase.
Oh, wait, purchase the entire?
Yeah, $8,000 at the point of sale. Yeah.
Like a few percent, like 4% at most in the US and 2% in the international.
Oh, I think it's even lower than that. I think it's under 1%.
I think so. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, but we're excluding Cybertruck from here, right? Cybertruck Foundation Series have 100% take rate, right? But SX sales are down. Model 3, Model Y, especially with the lower prices. I think the take rate on FSD purchase is way lower than people think. Subscriptions, on the other hand, are rising, but it's only in the first couple hundred thousand range, in my opinion, by my estimate. So the annualized FSD revenue today is only a few $100 million. So the question at the top is, when will it exceed 1 billion? And I would appreciate everyone in the space to reply to that question at the top. Machine?
Yeah, I think the key thing about the subscription is I think we will see big changes in subscription take rates, but the problem is it's due to partially the price cuts. And so the total revenue that you're getting, the change there, like Grant said, may actually go down because you have to double the subscription rate since they cut the prices in half. And I don't know if that happened yet.
We're going to go to Edward, Grant, and then Omar will close this off.
Yeah, I think you guys might be asking the wrong questions. Question number one is, what is Elon or Tesla willing to drop FSD down to? $49.99.
Yeah, I'll ask the questions, and we have 2 minutes to go. Grant?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that this is the reason it is a good question, and this is the reason they should disclose it, because no one really agrees, no one really knows. If you think about what Omar said, it might have been as high as $3 billion last year, and you think it's 100 million, maybe it's gone down $2 billion. Maybe that's a $2 billion impact to the bottom line that no one really knows because there's no disclosure around any of these metrics. So I don't know. I don't have great answers. I think that will ultimately be the right proof point to evaluate when you want to make claims like Omar makes, that this is a fantastic value prop. It's going to change everyone's life. But we'll be curious to see if they choose to disclose at a point this quarter or next quarter.
All right, Omar, you have the final word.
Yeah, so I commented with a link. Goldman did a hard look at this. They estimated FSD revenue at $1 to $3 billion. I think it's incredibly material even today. Obviously, there's the sales of FSD itself, the subscriptions, but this is a major reason why people buy the vehicles. Even the free basic autopilot is a major reason why people buy the vehicles. It's a major part of the value proposition. So it's very entwined with automotive revenue. But even just looking at the software segment, it's 1 to 3 billion. And you can check out the link. Goldman estimates it could be 75 billion by 2030, which is about 6 years from now. And the total revenue of the company was less than 100 billion. So even that, I think, is a conservative estimate, but it's material. No way you kind of shake it there. Now, on the question of subscriptions versus purchases, I think we're focusing a little bit too much on that. It doesn't really matter whether people purchase it or subscribe to it. The net present value, if you sort of look at the cash flows the company's going to receive long term, it's about the same whether you purchase or whether you subscribe. Because if you subscribe, the company actually generates more cash flow over a longer period of time. But when you buy it, you get a bunch of cash flow up front, but then that car is never going to be able to charge for subscription as the subscription price goes up. So they're priced so that it ends up being about the same for the company long term in terms of the cash flows they receive. So whether a user chooses to buy or subscribe, it really ends up being the same value over the life of the vehicle. And when you look at it from that perspective, you really want to talk about FSD in terms of like annual bookings. You want to look at, the expected churn rate with regards to the amount of revenue over a year that you're expecting. So, let's say the average user is subscribing for 3 months out of the year or something. And then you would look at it from that perspective.
All right. This space started out a little slow today, but it kind of accelerated and a lot of people jumped in the second half. I encourage people to hop in as soon as they can when this part stays, because this seems to happen often now. And maybe because we moved it up an hour, but this is as late as I can do right now. So please say your reminders when I tweet out the space reminder at the beginning of the day, and then come in as soon as possible. And I really like it when people request to speak as soon as they can when the space starts, because it always starts out slow and then kind of like it's up. Anyway, all right. Good discussions. Thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate all of you being here. I appreciate all my speakers, and especially you, Omar. You've done so much for the space. I really like that. And Sierra, I hope that you continue to come up to the speaker board more often and give us your share your technical expertise in AI. I want to dig into deeper than we do today. And then Grant, also thank you for coming up. I know we have our back and forth every now and then, but your presence makes this space better. All right. Thank you, everyone. And I will talk to you all next time. Take care.